Today's the last scheduled day for the Wisconsin State Assembly in Madison before they adjourn for the 2025-2026 legislative session. And in a final push, Democrats urging Republicans to help get two women's health bills across the finish line.
And that includes one bill inspired by a Neenah woman who lost her life to breast cancer. Gail's Law is named after Gail Zemer. She died in 2024 after her breast cancer was not detected by a standard mammogram. The law would require insurance companies to cover follow-up breast cancer screenings for women with dense breast tissue and other high-risk factors. It passed nearly unanimously in the state Senate, but it's not been scheduled for a floor vote in the Assembly.
Democrats have been fighting for these policies all session, and we are going to put everything we have into making sure that we do not gavel out before these policies are put into law.
I would say that there's members that just have some overall concerns with insurance mandates, and we're working through some of those concerns with those members, and we'll see what happens.
The second one, called the Postpartum Medicaid Expansion Bill, would extend insurance coverage for mothers after they give birth. This and Gail's Law both have more than 50 co-sponsors, meaning the proposals would likely pass if brought to the Assembly floor.
Also happening today, a bill to legalize online sports betting in Wisconsin could be put up for a potential vote on the Assembly floor. Currently, sports gambling in the state is only allowed in tribal casinos that offer it. The proposal would expand that to online gambling anywhere in the state, but with the servers anchored on tribal lands to comply with Wisconsin law.